Daredevil is a show that most fans consider to be the greatest Marvel adaptation ever made, and it's not hard to see why. Great casting choices coupled with top-tier writing and brutally choreographed fight scenes made it a standout among modern superhero adaptations. So when Marvel made the decision to get rid of any existing shows in favor of creating direct MCU spin-offs for Disney+, Daredevil was one of the first to go. Getting to 3 seasons is a big achievement for shows these days, so at least Daredevil went out on better terms than other less fortunate shows. Then the MCU started to crater, and they looked to gain favor with fans any way they could, so bringing back Daredevil seemed like the obvious choice. And they announced he would be getting his own Disney Plus show that would carry on the legacy of the Netflix show, but serve as a soft reboot for the character. Fans were already a bit uneasy given how terrible the MCU had become after Endgame, and seeing what they did to Daredevil on She-Hulk definitely didn't make anyone feel better about his MCU future. Then, as if Marvel somehow sensed how worried fans were, they decided to throw gas on what was already a dumpster fire to begin with.
For the record, this is what making things worse looks like.
According to a new Hollywood Reporter article, in late September, Marvel decided to fire everyone working on Daredevil Born Again, including the head writers and directors. Some are still on board as executive producers, with people comparing it to Scott Derrickson still being an EP on Multiverse of Madness, even though he really maintained no creative control over the project. Clearly, Marvel couldn't let go of such an extraordinary writing team. I mean, looking at their credits, it's obvious they were the right pick for what is arguably Marvel's most anticipated Disney Plus show. Kinda reminds me of certain Rings of Power writers who were handed a billion-dollar project with virtually no real large-scale writing experience, and we all saw how well that went. These guys apparently wrote a full-fledged legal drama, with Daredevil not showing up in costume until episode 4. Again, great decision by Marvel to greenlight that. We've seen how well their writers can craft legal dramas and how much they know about the law.
You serious?
Now, I can't say any of that actually surprised me. The only new information here is that they're choosing to actually reboot the whole project. That approach hasn't gone well for studios recently. They might have been better off just canceling the whole show. They're apparently trying to reuse some of the footage, but reboot the essence of the show, the whole thing just sounds like a disaster in the making. The best part of the article was this graph that showed watch minutes for all the Disney Plus shows, and if you needed more proof it's been going downhill non-stop, here it is. But they're making niche shows geared towards specific audiences, that's why some have lower watch minutes. Yeah, that would be fine if those shows cost significantly less to make. The issue is that all these shows are starting to cost at least $100 million, so for one show to have a total of 5 billion minutes watched, whereas some have 2 billion or less, is just embarrassing.
The only power I have is that I believe we can do better.
It's not like the Daredevil show had enormous levels of hype behind it to begin with. The soft reboot concept of the show meant eliminating fan-favorite side characters and plot lines. They tried to appease fans by bringing back Fisk and the Punisher, but if Fisk's portrayal on Hawkeye was anything to go by, these characters are going to be wrecked the same way She-Hulk ruined Daredevil. We also had the usual level of Marvel diversity, aka race-swapping comic book characters instead of having some actual talent and creating original characters. They're continuing Netflix's decision to race-swap Ben Urich by having a female character named BB Urich played by Janiyah Walton, as well as race-swapping Kirsten McDuffie, who is now being played by Nikki James. Honestly, those types of things aren't going to change anytime soon, because it's always easier for them to change someone else's work than it is for them to come up with an original, unique character of their own.
You read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility.
This is the first real move Marvel has made after the writer's strike ended, and it probably won't be the last. This seems like a show they're dead set on making work, probably because the Netflix show's success leads them to believe Daredevil is a gold mine just waiting to be tapped. That's why I'm not too surprised this one isn't getting Batgirled. If Echo still gets released, then I honestly doubt they'll Batgirl any of the shows, considering how much of a nightmare that show reportedly was behind the scenes. If that doesn't warrant a tax incentive cancellation, then I don't know what does.
How do we stop it? You can't stop it.
Speaking of behind the scenes, the report also talks about how Marvel has become a constant battleground, with Secret Invasion's production apparently leading to a struggle for power between different factions. Honestly, that sounds more exciting than any of these shows. Marvel tried to fix things, but Secret Invasion still ended up being a disaster. So according to the article, the days of shooting an entire series without testing a pilot first are over. Showrunners are now returning to the pre-streaming model of shooting a pilot first and then providing Marvel with their show Bible before the whole series gets greenlit. They're also done using filmmakers as showrunners, as Marvel looks to hire actual experienced executives to run their TV division. Now, experience doesn't mean shit unless it's referring to a successful project, because as we know, studios love to let these creatives fail upwards. Wouldn't take too much stock in that until we actually see who these new hires end up being. All of that makes the rumored ramifications of the strike seem more likely. Studios are looking to clean house, and they're using the strike and the new terms to do so. They're using force majeure to get rid of people already inside their companies, and using the new terms to justify making it harder to get a show greenlit. Anyone who's been paying attention isn't surprised by this change. Most of us have been saying it was inevitable for years, only to get labeled haters by delusional Twitter stans.
I see nothing. I was not here. I did not even get up this morning.
Does that mean Daredevil is dead on arrival? My guess would be yes. I don't like using that phrase too often, but it's like if you were driving and you saw multiple signs for an exit, your GPS was blaring about the exit, and when you miss it, you act surprised. Eventually, you have to recognize these patterns and realize there are processes that work for creating entertainment, and there are major red flags that should tell anyone with a brain trouble is on the horizon. Again, it doesn't make logical sense to assume Marvel is going to change until we see signs they're actually trying to. Firing these people could lead to hiring creatives they consider successful, who in reality failed their way up the ladder. If they're smart, they'd use the current state of Hollywood post-strikes to cut out the rot. But until we see that happen, I wouldn't keep my hopes up for a good Daredevil TV show coming out of the same studio that subjected us to Daredevil doing the walk of shame.